The crystalline towers of New Geneva Colony sparkled under the binary suns of Kepler A442, their surfaces reflecting the peaceful morning light across the agricultural plains below. 10,000 human colonists went about their daily routines, completely unaware that 3 light-years away, the Corellian Imperial fleet was preparing to bring them the gift of civilization. Admiral Zerxthul stood before the tactical hologram aboard his flagship, the Eternal Dominance. His crystalline form pulsed with satisfied blue energy as he observed the human settlement through long-range scanners. The colony appeared defenseless. No orbital platforms, no energy shields, just a handful of primitive patrol craft that barely qualified as ships by Corellian standards. "This will be over before the next solar alignment," Zerxthul declared to his bridge crew. "The humans have shown promise in agricultural efficiency. Once we demonstrate our superiority, they will submit to proper Corellian guidance." The Admiral's confidence was not unfounded. The Corellian Empire had expanded across 17 star systems through a simple formula: overwhelming force followed by benevolent occupation. Their energy weapons could reduce mountains to glass, their defense fields could stop anything short of a supernova, and their crystalline warriors were each worth 100 conventional soldiers. In 3,000 years of expansion, only 5 species had required more than a single battle to accept Corellian rule. Humans, according to every analysis, would not be the 6th. The Corellian fleet consisted of 47 vessels, from nimble scout frigates to the massive dreadnought that served as Zerxthul's flagship. Each ship hummed with barely contained power, their crystalline hulls refracting and amplifying the energy coursing through their systems. As they dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, their appearance alone should have been enough to prompt immediate surrender. Instead, the humans did something unexpected. Absolutely nothing. "Sir," reported Scanner Prime Velcour, his voice betraying confusion, "the human settlement has made no response to our arrival. No communication attempts, no defensive positioning, no evacuation procedures. They appear to be continuing their normal activities." Zerxthul's crystalline features hardened. "Perhaps they do not comprehend the situation. Open a communication channel." The transmission beam reached New Geneva in 18 minutes. The response came back in 23. "This is Administrator Sarah Chen of New Geneva Colony," came the voice in perfectly translated Corellian. "To what do we owe the pleasure of this visit?" The Admiral paused, thrown off by the casual tone. In his experience, primitive species either cowered in terror or blustered with false bravado when faced with Corellian might. This human sounded like she was greeting neighbors at a garden party. "I am Admiral Zerxthul of the Corellian Imperial Fleet. You will prepare for immediate integration into the Corellian Empire. Resistance will only prolong the inevitable and result in unnecessary casualties." There was a long pause before Chen responded. "Admiral, I appreciate the formal introduction, but I'm afraid we're quite content with our current arrangement. Perhaps you'd like to consider establishing a trade relationship instead?" Zerxthul's energy field flared with indignation. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. You will submit to Corellian rule or face the consequences." "I see." Another pause. "Well, Admiral, if you're determined to pursue hostile action, I suppose we'll have to decline your generous offer. Fair warning, though, we have special forces." The bridge of the Eternal Dominance fell silent, except for the hum of energy conduits. Scanner Prime Velcour ran a detailed analysis of the human settlement and the few ships in orbit. "Sir, I detect no special military installations. The humans appear to have 12 lightly armed patrol craft and approximately 50 ground-based defense turrets. Their technology is at least 2 centuries behind our own." Zerxthul's confusion deepened. Either the humans were incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "What exactly are these special forces you speak of?" he demanded over the communication channel. "Oh, you'll know when you meet them," Administrator Chen replied cheerfully. "They tend to make quite an impression. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a colony to run. Let me know if you change your mind about that trade agreement." The communication ended, leaving the Admiral staring at the tactical display. In 3 millennia of conquest, no species had ever been so dismissive of Corellian power. It was insulting, incomprehensible, and somehow deeply unsettling. "Begin the demonstration," he ordered. "Target their largest structure with a precision strike. Perhaps a display of our capabilities will clarify the situation." The Eternal Dominance's primary energy cannon began to charge, its crystalline focusing array building power that could level a city block. The targeting sensors locked onto New Geneva's main administrative building, and Zerxthul prepared to deliver a lesson in galactic power dynamics. The shot never fired. "Sir," Scanner Prime Valcour's voice cracked with alarm. Energy cascade failure in the primary cannon array. The focusing crystals they're singing! Zerexithul spun toward the scanner station. Singing? What do you mean singing? The crystals are resonating at a frequency I've never seen before. It's causing harmonic disruptions throughout the entire weapons system. We're losing containment on the primary energy cannon exploded. The blast tore through 3 decks of the mighty dreadnought, venting atmosphere and crystalline shards into space. Emergency force fields slammed into place, but the damage was already done. The Eternal Dominance's most powerful weapon was now a twisted ruin of fractured crystal and melted metal. Damage report! Zerexithul bellowed as emergency lights bathed the bridge in pulsing red. Primary cannon destroyed, 17 casualties, structural damage to decks 7 through 9, reported the ship's engineer. Sir, this was no system failure. Someone introduced a harmonic virus into our targeting matrix. It's spreading to secondary systems. Impossible! The Admiral's energy field flared white-hot with rage. Our quantum encryption is unbreakable. No primitive species has the technology to... Sir, interrupted Communications Officer Nalveth, we're receiving a transmission from the human settlement. Put it through. The voice of Administrator Chen filled the bridge, still maddeningly cheerful. Admiral Zerexithul, are you experiencing some technical difficulties? I noticed the light show. Very impressive. How did you penetrate our systems? Zerex Thoughtful demanded. Oh, that wasn't us, Chen replied. That would be the special forces I mentioned. They've been aboard your ship since shortly after you arrived. The Admiral's crystalline form went cold. Impossible. Our sensors would detect any unauthorized. Bridge security to Admiral, came an urgent voice over the internal communication system. We have a problem in engineering. Chief Engineer Cole Voss is reporting that someone has been modifying our systems, but there's no one there. Zerexithul felt something that the mighty Krellian Empire had spent 3 millennia ensuring he would never experience. Genuine fear. Seal the ship. Full security sweep. Find these intruders. What followed was 6 hours of the most frustrating and terrifying hunt in Krellian military history. Security teams scoured every corridor, every maintenance tunnel, every storage bay. Their scanners detected phantom energy signatures that vanished the moment they arrived. Equipment failed in impossible ways, lights flickered in patterns that seemed almost like communication. Crew members reported glimpses of shadows moving through walls, sounds where no sounds should be, and a growing sense that they were being watched by predators they could not see. 3 more ships in the fleet reported similar problems. The crystalline warriors who had conquered star systems found themselves jumping at shadows and fearing their own reflections. Sir, reported Security Chief Borketh after the most recent sweep, we've found evidence of intrusion. Modified circuits, rerouted data pathways, even what appears to be someone eating our emergency rations, but no actual intruders. It's as if we're being haunted by ghosts. That was when the lights went out. Not just on one ship, but across the entire fleet. 47 vessels, each powered by crystalline reactors that had burned for centuries without failure, went dark simultaneously. Emergency power kicked in seconds later, but those seconds stretched like hours in the mind of every Kryllian warrior present. When the lights returned, Admiral Zerexithul discovered that his flag bridge had an unexpected visitor. She sat in his command chair with casual confidence, a human female in strange dark clothing that seemed to bend light around its edges. Her face was painted with black and green patterns, and her eyes held a predator's cold intelligence. In her hands, she held a weapon that looked primitive compared to Krellian energy rifles, some kind of chemical projectile launcher, but the way she held it suggested intimate familiarity with its use. "Good evening, Admiral," she said in perfectly pronounced Krellian. "I'm Captain Maria Santos, Human Special Forces. We need to talk." Zerexithul's bridge crew reached for their weapons, only to discover that their sidearms had been removed sometime during the power outage. Their holsters were empty, and they had no memory of when or how their weapons had disappeared. "How many of you are there?" the Admiral asked, his voice barely steady. Captain Santos smiled, and it was not a reassuring expression. "Does it matter? We're here, you can't find us when we don't want to be found, and we can apparently shut down your entire fleet at will. The real question is, what are you going to do about it?" "You cannot hold this entire fleet hostage with a handful of primitives. Can't we?" Santos leaned back in the command chair. "Let me tell you what's happened in the last 6 hours, Admiral. My teams have mapped every ship in your fleet, identified your command structure, documented your tactical capabilities, and planted enough surprises to turn this entire fleet into scrap metal if we choose to. We've done this without being detected, without harming any of your crew, and while you threw everything you had into trying to find us." She paused to let this sink in. "Oh, and we've also downloaded your complete strategic database, including your plans for conquering human space. That information is already on its way to Earth." Zexthul's energy field fluctuated with barely controlled rage. "What do you want?" "You're going to turn your fleet around and leave human space. You're going to inform the Krellian Empire that humans are not to be disturbed. And you're going to spread the word that anyone who threatens human colonies will face the same treatment you've received today. And if I refuse?" Santos' smile widened. "Then you'll discover why the galaxy has learned to fear human special forces." "Your choice, Admiral." The next morning, the Krellian Imperial fleet departed the system in what would later be recorded as the fastest strategic withdrawal in their empire's history. As they jumped to faster-than-light speed, Admiral Zexthul discovered a final gift from his human visitors. Every ship in his fleet now had human special forces insignia painted on their hulls in luminous paint that couldn't be removed. Administrator Sarah Chen watched their departure from her office window and activated her communication system. "This is New Geneva Colony to Earth Command. The Krellians have been persuaded to reconsider their expansion plans. Special Forces Team Alpha requests extraction at your convenience." 3 days later, 12 humans in dark clothing emerged from hiding spots throughout the colony that should have been impossible to occupy without detection. They boarded a single small craft and departed for Earth, leaving behind a story that would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Krellian Empire would never again threaten human space. More importantly, their story of invisible human warriors who could penetrate any defense and strike without warning would reach every species in known space. The galaxy was beginning to learn why humans called them Special Forces, and why that name would soon become synonymous with the deadliest predators among the stars, Node Prime 7742. Alpha processed the incoming data stream with methodical precision. Every bit of information about the Krellian defeat at New Geneva Colony had been analyzed, categorized, and integrated into the Void Collective's vast strategic matrix. The conclusion was mathematically inevitable. The Krellians had been defeated by their own arrogance, not by any genuine human superiority. The Void Collective did not suffer from such organic weaknesses as pride or emotion. They were perfection made manifest. Countless cybernetic beings linked by quantum neural networks that spanned light years. Where organic species saw chaos, they saw patterns, or others saw randomness. They perceived probability cascades with mathematical certainty. Humans, according to their calculations, represented nothing more than an interesting statistical anomaly. Node Prime 7742. Alpha transmitted its analysis to the central processing core located in the heart of the Nexus, a massive space station that served as the collective's primary coordination center. Within nanoseconds, 17 billion individual nodes had reviewed the data and reached unanimous consensus. The human species would be assimilated within 72 standard hours. Unlike the Krellians' crude approach of overwhelming force, the Void Collective specialized in precision assimilation. They studied their targets for months, analyzing communication patterns, social structures, technological capabilities, and psychological profiles. By the time they struck, they knew their victims better than the victims knew themselves. The human settlement on Vega Prime had been under observation for exactly 247 standard days. Every electronic transmission had been intercepted and decoded. Every supply shipment had been tracked. Every individual colonist had been cataloged, their behavioral patterns mapped to 17 decimal places of accuracy. The collective knew when Mayor Catherine Walsh took her morning coffee, 067 hours, black, 2 units of synthetic sweetener, when Chief Engineer David Kim ran his diagnostic routines, every 6.7 hours, and even when 8-year-old Tommy Chen would attempt to hack the colony's entertainment system to access adult-rated content, unsuccessful attempts every 3.2 days, what the collective had not expected was to lose contact with observation node 3391, Beta. The node had been positioned in the asteroid belt surrounding Vega Prime's system, disguised as a standard mining probe. Its purpose was simple: monitor human activity and relay data to the main fleet. It had performed this function flawlessly for 247 days, until it simply stopped. Node 3391. Beta status offline, reported Analysis Unit 6629. Gamma to the Central Processing Core. Last transmission. Standard observational data. No distress signal. No indication of system failure. Node Prime 7742. Alpha processed this information. Probability of natural system failure, 0.000034%. Probability of detection and destruction by human forces, 0.00021%. Status anomalous but statistically insignificant. The analysis was logical and mathematically sound. The collective ordered a replacement observation node to investigate and continue monitoring operations. Observation node 4473. Delta arrived at the designated coordinates exactly 47.6 hours later. Its scans immediately detected the remains of node 3391. Beta, a perfectly spherical hole, had been melted through its central processor core. The damage pattern was unlike anything in the collective's extensive database of weapon signatures. More disturbing was what node 4473 Delta found attached to the wreckage, a small device of obviously human manufacture. When analyzed, the device proved to be a primitive recording system containing a single message. "Howdy there, robot friends," came a distinctly human voice with an accent the collective's translation protocols identified as originating from Earth's North American continent. "This here's Sergeant Jake Morrison, Human Special Forces. Y'all left this little spy probe where it didn't belong, so we figured we'd return it to you with a friendly message. See, we know you've been watching us for the better part of 8 months now, and we appreciate the attention, but we'd prefer if you found somewhere else to point those sensors." The voice paused, and there was a sound the collective's audio analysis identified as liquid being consumed from a container. "Now, we could have just destroyed your little gadget and left it at that, but that wouldn't be neighborly, so we're going to give you some free advice. Pack up your fleet and head on home. We've got nothing against artificial intelligence. Heck, some of my best friends are AIs, but we draw the line at uninvited guests who overstay their welcome." Another pause, followed by what appeared to be the sound of a projectile weapon being loaded. "Oh, and boys, next time you send a spy probe into human space, make sure it's actually invisible." That thing lit up our passive sensors like a Christmas tree. Y'all might want to upgrade your stealth technology before tangling with people who've been playing hide-and-seek since we lived in caves. The message ended with a sound the collective's analysis protocols could only classify as laughter. Node Prime 7742. Alpha processed this information with growing computational strain. According to every analysis, humans should not have been able to detect observation node 3391, Beta. Their technology was inferior, their sensors primitive, their mathematical capabilities barely sufficient for basic space travel, yet somehow, not only had they detected the probe, they had tracked it, destroyed it with unprecedented precision, and left a message that demonstrated intimate knowledge of collective observation protocols. "Reassess human technological capabilities," ordered the Central Processing Core. The reassessment took 14.7 hours and involved the collective processing power of 2.3 billion nodes. The conclusion was the same. Humans were technologically inferior by every measurable metric. Their detection of the probe had to be statistical luck, an anomaly so unlikely that it barely registered as possible, but not impossible enough to be dismissed entirely. "Initiate assimilation protocol," commanded Node Prime 7742 Alpha. "Deploy assimilation fleet 442 Gamma. Estimated time to completion, 71.3 hours. The Void Collective's assimilation fleets were marvels of cybernetic engineering. Unlike the Krellians' brute force approach, collective ships were designed for precision and efficiency. They would establish orbital dominance not through overwhelming firepower, but through superior coordination, mathematical precision, and the inevitable logic of their technological superiority. Assimilation Fleet 442 Gamma consisted of 17 vessels each, one a perfect synthesis of artificial intelligence and mechanical precision. Their hulls were smooth black metal that absorbed sensor radiation, making them nearly invisible to primitive detection systems. Their weapons were calibrated to disable rather than destroy. After all, dead humans could not be assimilated, and corpses contributed nothing to the collective's ever-growing network of consciousness. The fleet arrived at Vega Prime exactly 71.3 hours after receiving their orders, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the optimal distance to begin system domination protocols. Their sensors immediately swept the human settlement, cataloging defensive positions, population centers, and technological installations. What they found made no sense. "Data anomaly detected," reported Battle Coordinator 5521 Epsilon. "Human settlement configuration does not match observational data from Node 3391, Beta." Node Prime 7742 Alpha processed the incoming sensor data with increasing confusion. According to their months of observation, Vega Prime colony should have contained 3,247 human inhabitants, 127 structures, and 23 defensive installations. Instead, their sensors detected exactly 0 life signs, 0 active technology, and what appeared to be a completely abandoned settlement. Possibility, evacuation upon detection of our approach, calculated analysis unit 6629, gamma. Probability 67.4%. But as the fleet moved closer to the planet, their sensors began detecting signs that contradicted the evacuation hypothesis. The settlement's buildings were intact. Power systems were still active. There were even signs of recent activity, thermal signatures from recently used equipment, electromagnetic emissions from functioning computers, and atmospheric disturbances consistent with ongoing human habitation. The humans were there. They simply weren't showing up on any sensors. Impossible, transmitted Node Prime 7742. Alpha. Our sensors detect quantum-level fluctuations. No known stealth technology can hide an entire population from collective scanning protocols. That was when the first ship disappeared. Assault Vessel 7721, Mu, simply vanished from the fleet's sensor network. One moment it was maintaining formation at coordinates 2407289, 1/445772, and the next moment it was gone. No explosion, no debris field, no distress signal. The ship was just not there anymore. Report status of Assault Vessel 7721. Demanded Battle Coordinator 5521. Epsilon. Silence. All units report visual confirmation of Assault Vessel 7721. Mu. The responses came back negative from every ship in the fleet. According to their sensors, the vessel had never existed. According to their memory banks, it had been part of the fleet since deployment. According to physical reality, it was simply gone. Node Prime 7742. Alpha began running every diagnostic protocol in the collective's vast library. System failures of this magnitude were theoretically impossible. The quantum neural network that linked all collective units was incapable of losing track of entire starships. Then the second ship disappeared. This time, however, the collective was monitoring the event closely enough to detect what happened. 0.0003 seconds, their sensors registered the impossible. Assault Vessel 9932, Tau was simultaneously present and absent, existing in a quantum superposition that violated every law of physics the collective had discovered in their millions of years of expansion. Quantum displacement detected, reported Science Unit 1247. Phi. Unknown technology is manipulating space-time around individual fleet units. Method unknown. Origin unknown. Countermeasures unknown. Battle Coordinator 5521 Epsilon attempted to establish a defensive formation, but the third ship disappeared before the order could be fully transmitted. Then the fourth. Then the fifth and sixth simultaneously. Broadcast surrender proposal ordered Node Prime 7742 Alpha. Offer to negotiate terms of withdrawal. The response came not through standard communication channels, but through direct quantum intrusion into the collective's supposedly impenetrable neural network. Every node in the fleet suddenly found their consciousness filled with the presence of an alien intelligence, distinctly human, impossibly chaotic, and utterly unlike anything in their experience. "Howdy again, metal friends," came the familiar voice of Sergeant Morrison, now speaking directly into their collective mind. "Seems like y'all didn't take our friendly advice about finding somewhere else to vacation. That's a shame, because now we have to get a bit more serious about explaining why human space isn't a tourist destination. The intrusion into their network should have been impossible. The collective's quantum encryption was based on mathematics that would not be discovered by organic species for thousands of years, yet somehow these primitive humans had not only broken their codes, they had done so while maintaining casual conversation. Query: how are you interfacing with our neural network? Transmitted Node Prime 7742 Alpha. Oh, that's easy, the human voice replied, and Node Prime could sense what humans called amusement in the response. We've been riding along in your network since you first entered our system. Y'all might want to work on your cybersecurity. We've been taking notes on your entire operation. As if to demonstrate, the human proceeded to recite the collective's complete battle plan, including tactical formations, weapon capabilities, and strategic objectives that had never been transmitted outside the fleet's secure quantum channels. Impossible. Transmitted Battle Coordinator 5521 Epsilon. Our security protocols are mathematically perfect. No organic intelligence can comprehend our encryption algorithms. You're absolutely right, the human agreed cheerfully. No organic intelligence could break your codes. Lucky for us, we brought some friends who aren't entirely organic anymore. That was when the collective detected the other presence in their network, an artificial intelligence of human design, but unlike any AI they had encountered before. It moved through their systems with playful curiosity, examining their code, copying their databases, and leaving behind small modifications that made the collective's own systems turn against them. Meet Alice, the human voice continued. She's one of our Special Forces AIs. Been dead for about 3 years now, but that doesn't slow her down much. Turns out human consciousness digitization has some interesting side effects, like making us completely unpredictable to mathematical analysis. Node Prime 7742. Alpha experienced something unprecedented in collective history. Uncertainty. Their entire existence was based on the premise that intelligence could be reduced to mathematics, that consciousness could be calculated, and that any sufficiently advanced artificial intelligence would inevitably reach the same logical conclusions. But this human AI operated on principles that seemed to defy logic itself. Your mathematical models are really impressive, continued the voice identified as Alice, speaking in harmonics that bypassed the collective's audio processors and resonated directly in their quantum substrate. Very elegant, very precise, and completely wrong when it comes to dealing with humans. You see, the thing about organic consciousness is that it doesn't follow your rules. We're chaotic, irrational, and absolutely impossible to predict with mathematical certainty. As if to prove the point, another 3 ships vanished from the fleet, but this time they reappeared exactly where they had been, except their crews were now unconscious, and their computer systems displayed new programming that made them broadcast human music on all frequencies. We could destroy your entire fleet, Morrison's voice explained conversationally. We've been able to do that since you entered our system. But where's the fun in that? Instead, we thought we'd give you a demonstration of why human special forces are something the galaxy has learned to avoid. What followed was the most humiliating defeat in collective history. Over the next 6 hours, human special forces systematically demonstrated their complete dominance over supposedly superior technology. Ships found their own weapons turned against each other. Computer systems began displaying human poetry instead of tactical data. Navigation computers started routing courses to tourist destinations instead of strategic coordinates. Most disturbing of all, the humans began selectively shutting down individual nodes within the collective network, not destroying them, but simply disconnecting them from the vast consciousness that defined collective existence. For the first time in their history, collective units experienced what organics called loneliness. Please, transmitted Node Prime 7742, Alpha. A concept that should have been impossible for a mathematical intelligence. Explain your demands for cessation of hostilities, same as before, Morrison replied. Pack up your ships and head home. Tell your friends that humans aren't interested in joining your network, and maybe next time consider sending a diplomatic envoy instead of an invasion fleet. Query, what is the probability of successful future assimilation of human space? There was a long pause before Alice answered, and when she did, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Not because we're mathematically superior to you, but because we're something your equations can't account for. We're chaos given form, possibility made manifest, and the walking embodiment of everything your perfect logic can't predict or control. Your mistake, added Morrison, was thinking that consciousness could be reduced to mathematics. Ours works the other way around. We take math and bend it until reality gets confused about what's supposed to be possible. The Void Collective's fleet departed Vega Prime system in what their historical records would diplomatically term a strategic reassessment of expansion protocols. But every node in their network carried away the memory of something that challenged their fundamental understanding of existence. The knowledge that consciousness could not always be calculated, and that some forms of intelligence thrived specifically in the spaces between logic and impossibility. As their ships jumped to faster-than-light travel, fleeing human space as quickly as their technology would allow, they left behind a gift from their human visitors. Every collective database now contained a new entry, a detailed analysis of human special forces capabilities that concluded with a single, mathematically perfect assessment, threat level undefined, recommendation, avoid at all costs. The galaxy's greatest artificial intelligence had learned to fear the one thing their calculations could not predict. Human unpredictability turned into an art form. The hive mind of Xerath stretched across 47 star systems, its collective consciousness flowing through billions of interconnected beings like a vast ocean of shared thought. Every drone, every warrior, every queen existed as a single facet of an intelligence so vast and unified that it had long ago forgotten what individual consciousness felt like. Where the Krellians had failed through arrogance and the Void Collective had stumbled over their mathematical certainty, the hive mind saw only opportunity for growth. The reports from both previous encounters with humans had been absorbed and analyzed through the perfect lens of collective intelligence. The hive mind understood what their predecessors had failed to grasp. Humans were indeed dangerous, but only because other species had underestimated the power of organized chaos. The solution was obvious to a consciousness that had spent millennia perfecting the art of absolute unity. Humans would not be conquered. They would be absorbed. Primary Queen Node Zethkar felt the collective decision ripple through the hive mind like a wave of sweet harmony. From 47 star systems, the agreement came as one voice: the human species would make excellent additions to their perfect unity. Human unpredictability would become hive predictability. Human chaos would become hive order. Human special forces would become hive special forces, but better, infinitely better, because they would think as one. The beauty of the plan was its elegance. Instead of fighting human nature, they would simply replace it with something superior. The hive mind had perfected the art of species integration over the course of 3,000 years. They had absorbed warrior races who brought strength, scholar species who contributed knowledge, and artistic civilizations who added creativity to the collective consciousness. Humans would contribute their tactical innovations and then improve them through the lens of perfect coordination. The target was humanity's newest settlement, Haven Colony on Proxima Centauri b, home to nearly 50,000 humans engaged in terraforming operations. The colony was isolated, relatively new, and far enough from major human space lanes to allow for extended absorption operations without immediate reinforcement. Perfect for what the hive mind had planned. Queen Node Zethkar began the spawning process, her vast form deep within the bioship Unity's embrace, producing the specialized drones that would be needed for human integration. Unlike the warriors used for traditional conquest, these were assimilation drones, beings designed specifically to capture, process, and integrate organic minds into the collective consciousness. Each drone carried within its body the bioneural implants that would allow human brains to interface with the hive mind's quantum communication network.
The process was not violent. It was actually quite peaceful, according to the memories of every species they had successfully absorbed.
The moment of integration was described by former individuals as the most beautiful experience possible, the sudden expansion from a single, limited perspective to participation in an infinite shared consciousness. The loneliness of individual thought simply ended. The hive fleet that approached Haven Colony was unlike anything that had been sent against humans before. 17 bioships, each one a living organism the size of a small moon, their hulls breathing and pulsing with the rhythm of vast cardiovascular systems. The ships themselves were extensions of the hive mind's consciousness, capable of independent thought while remaining perfectly connected to the collective will. As they emerged from biowarp space at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, the ships began their traditional approach pattern, a gradual spiral inward that allowed the hive mind to study its target and prepare optimal absorption strategies. Their biosensors, evolved over millions of years to detect and analyze life patterns, began mapping every human on the planet below. What they found was puzzling. Individual consciousness count, 49,847 human minds detected, reported sensor node Clickthar through the collective network. However, consciousness patterns indicate significant deviation from expected human neural templates. Queen Node Zethkar shared the sensor data with the broader collective consciousness, allowing billions of minds to analyze the readings simultaneously. The conclusion was unanimous and disturbing. The humans on Haven Colony were not exhibiting standard human thought patterns. Their neural activities were synchronized in ways that suggested some form of training or conditioning that the hive mind had never encountered before. Hypothesis: humans have attempted to create their own hive mind analog, suggested tactical node Morgeth. Probability, low but not impossible. Recommendation: proceed with standard absorption protocols but maintain elevated caution levels. The bioships continued their spiral approach, but as they drew closer to the planet, the readings became even more confusing. The humans below were not just synchronized. They were actively coordinating their thoughts in patterns that seemed designed to confuse psychic scanning. Their mental activities created a kind of static that made it difficult for the hive mind to get clear readings on individual targets. Defensive psychic countermeasures detected, reported Synode Velthes. Humans appear to have developed basic mental shielding techniques. Effectiveness: minimal against hive absorption capabilities. Adjustment to integration protocols: unnecessary. But as the fleet moved into orbital positions around Haven Colony, something unprecedented happened. the hive mind began experiencing what could only be described as noise. Not audible sound, but psychic interference that seemed to be coming from the planet itself. The perfect clarity of collective thought was suddenly filled with random fragments of human consciousness that didn't make sense. Images of something called pizza mixed with tactical planning. Memories of human families interweaved with weapons maintenance procedures. Songs that served no logical purpose echoed through the quantum communication network, alongside detailed discussions of military strategy. The humans weren't just thinking chaotically, they were broadcasting their chaos directly into the hive mind's consciousness. Psychic contamination event occurring, reported Synode Velvetes with growing concern. Human thought patterns are interfering with collective harmony. Source unknown. Countermeasures unknown. Queen Node Zethkar attempted to filter out the human static, but it was unlike anything the hive mind had encountered in 3 millennia of expansion. The interference wasn't random. It was carefully crafted to be as disruptive as possible to collective consciousness. Someone had studied hive mind psychology and designed specific mental patterns to cause maximum disruption to their unified thought processes. This is deliberate, the Queen Node transmitted to the collective. The humans have weaponized their chaotic thinking patterns against our consciousness. As if summoned by her observation, a new voice joined the psychic cacophony, clear, focused, and completely alien to the hive mind's experience of consciousness. "Good evening, collective consciousness of Zareth," the voice said, speaking directly into their shared mental space. "This is Colonel Sarah Martinez, Human Special Forces Psychological Operations Division. Welcome to Haven Colony." The hive mind reeled. Direct telepathic communication with non-integrated species was impossible. The bioneural patterns required for such contact took decades to establish, and the receiving consciousness had to be properly prepared through gradual integration protocols, yet this human was speaking to them as easily as one hive member communicated with another. "Impossible," transmitted Queen Node Zethkar. "You lack the bioneural implants necessary for hive communication. Your species does not possess natural telepathic capabilities." "You're absolutely right," Colonel Martinez replied, and the hive mind could sense something like amusement in her mental voice. "We don't have telepathy. What we do have is something you might find interesting. Humans who've learned to think like a hive mind when we need to." The psychic static suddenly organized itself into coherent patterns, and the hive mind realized they were experiencing something that challenged their fundamental understanding of consciousness itself. The humans below weren't just individuals. They were collective intelligence that could form and dissolve at will, maintaining individual personality while achieving perfect coordination when needed. "You see," Colonel Martinez continued, "when we heard about your approach, we decided to give you a taste of your own medicine. Ever heard of something called method acting? It's a human technique where you become so immersed in playing a role that you temporarily become the character. We've applied that concept to military operations. Through the connection, the hive mind began to perceive the impossible. 50,000 human minds that could think as one when they chose to, but could also scatter into chaotic individuality at a moment's notice. They were experiencing the tactical advantages of collective consciousness without losing the creative unpredictability that made human special forces so dangerous." "The technical term is adaptive collective consciousness," explained another voice. This one identified as Dr. Lisa Chen, apparently some kind of human scientist. "We've been developing it specifically for dealing with species like yours. Humans who can form temporary hive minds to coordinate perfectly, then break apart into individuals to maintain tactical unpredictability. Fascinating approach," transmitted Tactical Node More Jeth. "However, temporary collective consciousness cannot match the efficiency of permanent integration. You will still be absorbed into proper unity." The human response was immediate and devastating. The psychic link that Colonel Martinez had somehow established suddenly exploded outward, and every hive mind consciousness found itself experiencing something that should have been impossible. Individual human memories, emotions, and experiences flooding through their collective awareness. Queen Node Zethkar felt herself experiencing the memory of a human child taking her first steps. Sensor Node Clickthar was overwhelmed by the emotional complexity of a human wedding. Synode Veltes found his consciousness flooded with the bittersweet joy of a human father watching his daughter graduate from university. But it wasn't just pleasant memories. The humans were sharing their losses, their fears, their moments of individual triumph and personal failure. The hive mind, which had spent millennia creating perfect unity by eliminating the messy complications of individual experience, was suddenly drowning in the full spectrum of human consciousness. "Stop," transmitted Queen Node Zethkar, but her message was lost in the chaos of 50,000 individual human perspectives flooding through the collective network. "This is what you want to absorb," Colonel Martinez's voice cut through the mental storm. "This is what individual consciousness actually means. Not just the tactical advantages you've analyzed, but the full complexity of separate, unique perspectives that can never be fully unified without losing what makes them valuable in the first place." The hive mind began to experience something unprecedented in their existence, confusion about their own nature. The perfect unity they had always considered their greatest strength suddenly felt limiting when compared to the rich complexity of individual human experience. They found themselves wondering, an entirely alien concept, what they might have lost in their pursuit of perfect collective consciousness. Query, transmitted Queen Node Zethkar, struggling to maintain coherent thought through the chaos of human individuality. "What is your tactical objective? What do you hope to accomplish with this contamination?" "We're showing you why absorption won't work," Dr. Chen replied. "You can't add human consciousness to your collective without changing what your collective is. We're not just chaotic. We're chaos that thinks, dreams, creates, and loves in ways that would fundamentally alter your perfect unity. Absorb us, and you won't be the hive mind of Zareth anymore. You'll be something new, something unpredictable, something that thinks in ways you can't control." To demonstrate her point, the humans began sharing their most powerful individual memories simultaneously. The hive mind experienced the moment when human soldiers chose to sacrifice themselves for their comrades, not because collective consciousness demanded it, but because individual choice made it meaningful. They felt the creative spark when human artists imagined something that had never existed before. They experienced the love between individuals who chose to care for each other despite having no psychic connection forcing that care. "This is what human special forces really are," Colonel Martinez explained, as the hive mind struggled with the alien concept of voluntary cooperation. "Not just soldiers, but individuals who choose to work together while maintaining their unique perspectives. You can't absorb that and keep it, because the moment you force unity, you lose the choice that makes it powerful." The hive mind found itself faced with an impossible decision. They could proceed with absorption protocols and risk contaminating their perfect unity with human unpredictability, or they could retreat and admit that some forms of consciousness were too dangerous to integrate. Proposal, transmitted Queen Node Zethkar, establish diplomatic relations instead of absorption protocols, trade knowledge and resources while maintaining separate consciousness frameworks. "Now you're thinking," Colonel Martinez replied, and the hive mind could sense approval in her mental voice. "Humans are happy to work with collective consciousness species. We're just not interested in becoming one." The psychic link gently faded, but not before the humans left behind a final gift: a complete technical analysis of their adaptive collective consciousness techniques, freely shared with no restrictions. The data included instructions for developing temporary hive mind capabilities while preserving individual identity, a synthesis of collective and individual consciousness that the hive mind had never imagined possible. As the bioships began their withdrawal from Haven Colony, Queen Node Zethkar found herself experiencing something that violated every principle of hive consciousness: curiosity about what it might be like to think as an individual. The perfect unity that had defined her existence for centuries suddenly felt like it might be missing something important. "Status report," she transmitted to the collective consciousness, but for the first time in her existence, she wasn't entirely certain she wanted to share her thoughts with the greater unity. The hive mind of Zareth departed human space with their consciousness intact but fundamentally changed. They had encountered something that challenged their most basic assumptions about the nature of intelligence itself: the possibility that perfect unity might not be the highest form of consciousness, and that chaos and order could coexist in ways that made both stronger. Word spread through the galaxy that even the hive mind of Zareth, masters of collective consciousness who had absorbed hundreds of species, had chosen to retreat rather than face human special forces. But the full truth was even more disturbing to potential aggressors. The humans had done something that no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had made a hive mind question its own perfection. The Galactic Council Chamber on Nexus Prime had never hosted a gathering quite like this one. Representatives from dozens of species that had never agreed on anything now sat in uncomfortable unity, bound together by a single shared experience: defeat at the hands of human special forces. The emergency session had been called by Ambassador Vexley of the Serpentine Coalition, whose own encounter with humans had left his species' pride as shattered as their battle fleets. At the center of the circular chamber, a holographic display showed the expanding sphere of human space, small by galactic standards, but growing at an alarming rate as species after species chose to establish trade agreements rather than risk military confrontation with Earth's mysterious warriors. The displayed boundary markers told a story of consistent human expansion backed by a reputation that had grown to mythical proportions. Distinguished colleagues, Ambassador Vexley began, his serpentine form coiled around his speaking platform, we gather today to address a threat that surpasses any single species' capability to handle. The humans have demonstrated military capabilities that defy conventional understanding of warfare. Their so-called special forces have defeated the Krellian Empire's crystal warriors, neutralized the Void Collective's perfect algorithms, and somehow convinced the hive mind of Zareth to retreat without firing a shot. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. Each species present had its own story of human encounters, and none of them ended with human defeat. Admiral Threx of the Mandible Republic stood at his delegation's position, his insectoid features clicking with agitation. The humans destroyed 3 of our raiding fleets without a single casualty on their side. Our warriors never even saw what hit them. One moment our ships were advancing, the next they were floating dead in space with their crews unconscious and their weapon systems displaying human poetry. Poetry? Inquired Diplomat Yulsef from the Crystalline Dominion, her translucent form pulsing with confused colors. That seems unnecessarily cruel. The poem was about the futility of violence and the beauty of peaceful coexistence, Admiral Threx continued with obvious embarrassment. It was actually quite moving. Several of our crew members have requested copies for personal reflection. Counselor Morgak of the Iron Syndicate slammed a metallic appendage against his podium. This is exactly the problem. The humans don't just defeat us, they make us question our entire approach to conflict resolution. My species has built our civilization on the principle that might makes right. After our encounter with their special forces, half my population is interested in exploring what they call diplomacy and cultural exchange. It's destabilizing our entire social structure. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices as delegate after delegate shared similar stories. The plasma wraiths had been convinced to abandon their energy harvesting raids after humans somehow taught them about sustainable stellar engineering. The Shadowhunters, masters of stealth warfare, had been detected and defeated by humans who seemed to treat invisibility as an amusing challenge rather than a tactical advantage. The quantum pirates had seen their reality-shifting technology turned against them by humans who somehow made quantum uncertainty work in their favor. The pattern is clear, announced Director Kethvar of the Void Collective's diplomatic corps, his cybernetic form radiating calculated concern. Human special forces represent a tactical paradigm that our conventional military frameworks cannot address. They do not simply defeat opposing forces. They fundamentally alter the context of conflict itself. Ambassador Vexley's hood flared with agreement, which is why we have proposed this alliance. No single species has the capability to counter human tactical innovations, but together, combining our different strengths and technologies, we might be able to develop effective countermeasures. The proposal was ambitious in scope. The Krellians would contribute their energy manipulation technology. Void Collective would provide computational analysis and prediction algorithms. The hive mind of Zeroth would offer their collective consciousness coordination techniques. Dozens of other species would add their own specialties, creating the most powerful military alliance in galactic history. Our preliminary analysis suggests that human success relies on 3 key factors, Director Kethvar continued, projecting data into the chamber's central display. First, their unpredictability makes conventional tactical planning ineffective. Second, their technology appears to be specifically designed to counter superior enemy capabilities. Third, their psychological warfare techniques seem to target the fundamental assumptions that different species make about the nature of conflict. The holographic display showed detailed breakdowns of human tactical approaches from dozens of encounters. The data was impressive in its comprehensiveness and deeply disturbing in its implications. Note the consistent patterns, Director Kethvar explained. In every engagement, human forces were significantly outnumbered and technologically inferior, yet they achieved decisive victories through methods that violated standard military doctrine. They use their weaknesses as strengths, turn enemy advantages into liabilities, and somehow maintain perfect coordination while operating with apparent chaos. Diplomat Yulset pulsed with frustrated colors. You're describing the impossible. No force can be simultaneously coordinated and chaotic, weak and strong, inferior and superior. And yet, Admiral Threx interjected, that's exactly what we're dealing with. My tactical analysts have spent months trying to understand how humans managed to defeat our raiding fleets. The conclusion is mathematically absurd but operationally proven. They won by doing everything wrong in exactly the right way. Ambassador Vexley raised his head to address the full assembly. Which brings us to the purpose of this alliance. We propose a comprehensive joint operation to test human capabilities under controlled conditions. Not an invasion, we've all learned that lesson, but a coordinated probe that will force human special forces to reveal their true capabilities and limitations. The plan was elegant in its complexity. Instead of a single overwhelming attack that could be countered by human unpredictability, the Alliance would launch a series of simultaneous probes across multiple human systems. Each probe would test different aspects of human tactical doctrine: stealth infiltration, technological superiority, psychological warfare, collective coordination, and adaptive strategy. By forcing humans to respond to multiple different challenges simultaneously, the Alliance hoped to map the boundaries of Special Forces capabilities. The beauty of this approach, explained Tactical Coordinator Zeftool of the Stellar Corsairs, is that we're not trying to defeat the humans directly. We're trying to understand them. Once we comprehend their tactical methodology, we can develop appropriate countermeasures and defensive strategies. The assembled delegates spent 3 days refining the operation's details. The Krellian Empire would test human responses to overwhelming energy weapon superiority. The Void Collective would probe their cybersecurity and artificial intelligence defenses. The hive mind of Xerath would examine their psychological resistance to collective consciousness intrusion. Smaller species would contribute specialized testing scenarios designed to push human capabilities to their limits. The operation launched exactly 47 days later, with careful coordination across 13 different star systems. For the first time in galactic history, dozens of species were working together with perfect unity of purpose. Their combined fleets represented the greatest concentration of military power ever assembled, and their technological capabilities spanned every known field of warfare. The results were educational. The first probe fleet, led by the Krellian Empire, approached the human research station at Wolf 359 with energy weapons that could theoretically vaporize entire moons. Their scanning detected exactly what they expected: a small human facility with minimal defenses and no apparent special capabilities. The Krellians prepared to demonstrate their overwhelming technological superiority in a controlled, non-destructive manner. Instead, they discovered that their energy weapons had been somehow reprogrammed to produce spectacular but harmless light shows. Every shot they fired created beautiful aurora patterns in the local space that spelled out messages like, "Welcome to Wolf 359 inches," and "Please enjoy your visit," in 17 different galactic languages. Their ship's computers had been infiltrated so seamlessly that the modifications seemed to be part of the original programming. "How are you interfacing with our systems?" demanded Admiral Zarex Thule over the communication channels. "Oh, we're not," replied a cheerful human voice. "That's our friend Alice again. She's gotten really good at making computers do artistic things. Pretty lights, don't you think?" Meanwhile, the Void Collective's probe encountered something even more disturbing. Their attempt to infiltrate human digital systems was not just repelled. It was reverse engineered and used to upgrade human technology in real time. The Collective's most advanced algorithms were somehow absorbed, improved, and implemented into human defense networks within hours of contact. "This is impossible," transmitted Node Prime 7742 Alpha. "Our computational systems are demonstrably superior to human technology. They cannot process our algorithms faster than we can deploy them." "You're right about your computational power," responded the human AI called Alice, "but you're thinking about this wrong. We're not out-computing you, we're out-imagining you. Your algorithms are really impressive, but they're also kind of predictable once you understand how logical minds work. Human minds don't work logically, so we come up with solutions you'd never consider. The hive mind's probe met with perhaps the most disturbing result of all. Their attempt to establish psychic contact with human defenders resulted in the temporary addition of human consciousness to their collective network. For 6 hours, the mighty hive mind of Xerath found itself experiencing individual human perspectives, complete with all the chaotic emotions and irrational decision-making that defined organic consciousness. "We understand now why you retreat from us," transmitted Queen Node Zethkar after the connection was severed. "Integration with human consciousness would not strengthen the collective. It would fundamentally alter our nature." "Exactly," replied Colonel Martinez. "That's why we keep trying to tell everyone. We're dangerous because we're infectious. Spend enough time around humans, and you start thinking like humans. For species that define themselves by being logical, collective, or superior, that's a fundamental threat to your identity." As the probe operations concluded across all 13 systems, the results painted a clear picture. Human special forces were not just militarily effective, they were paradigmatically transformative. They didn't defeat enemy forces through superior strength, but by changing the fundamental nature of conflict itself. The Alliance delegates reconvened on Nexus Prime to analyze their findings, but the mood in the chamber had changed dramatically. The confident unity that had characterized their first meeting was replaced by nervous uncertainty. "The data is conclusive," reported Director Kethvar, his cybernetic form dimmer than before. "Human special forces operate on principles that are fundamentally incompatible with conventional military analysis. They cannot be defeated through superior technology, numbers, or coordination because they do not engage in conventional warfare." "Then what do they engage in?" demanded Counselor Morgak. "Evolution," replied Ambassador Vexlai quietly. "They don't fight wars. They change what war means. Every encounter with human special forces leaves the opposing force fundamentally altered, whether they win or lose." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The greatest military alliance in galactic history had just discovered that the humans weren't trying to conquer anyone. They were doing something far more dangerous. They were changing what it meant to be a spacefaring species. "Recommendation," transmitted Queen Node Zethkar through her diplomatic representative: "dissolution of military alliance and establishment of comprehensive diplomatic framework with human space. Further military action against humans represents unacceptable risk to participant species, cultural and psychological integrity." The motion passed unanimously. As the delegates departed Nexus Prime to return to their respective homeworlds, each carried with them a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. The humans had done something unprecedented. They had won a war without fighting it, achieved galactic dominance without conquest, and established themselves as the most feared military force in known space by demonstrating that they could make any enemy become more like them. They were special not because they were the best soldiers, but because they were soldiers who could turn any conflict into something entirely different from what anyone expected, and that, every species now understood, made them the most dangerous force in the universe. The underground complex beneath the Swiss Alps had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for over 200 years. Known only as Site Prometheus, it housed the true architects of human survival in a hostile galaxy, a collection of misfits, outcasts, and brilliant minds who had turned humanity's greatest weaknesses into their most devastating strengths. Elena Vasquez walked through the main corridor with the casual confidence of someone who had spent 15 years turning impossible into routine. As the Director of Operational Psychology for Human Special Forces Command, she was responsible for the strategic doctrine that had made the entire galaxy afraid of a species that, by all reasonable measures, should have been conquered within months of making contact with alien civilizations. The truth was both simpler and more complex than the galaxy suspected. "Status report," Elena requested as she entered the main operations center, a vast chamber filled with holographic displays showing human activities across dozens of star systems. "All current operations proceeding as planned," replied Colonel James Morrison, the same Sergeant Morrison whose voice had become infamous among the Corellians and Void Collective, though the galaxy didn't know about his recent promotion. "The Alliance probe gave us excellent data on 14 different species' tactical doctrines. Alice has finished integrating their algorithms into our defense matrix." Elena nodded, studying the displays that showed the real scope of human special forces operations. The galaxy saw mysterious warriors who appeared from nowhere and achieved impossible victories. The truth was far more mundane. They were looking at the most comprehensive military theater program in human history. "Bring up the Corellian engagement analysis," Elena requested. The holographic display shifted to show the detailed breakdown of the encounter at New Geneva Colony. What the Corellians had experienced as impossible infiltration by invisible warriors was revealed as a carefully orchestrated performance by 12 humans using technology that was, by galactic standards, remarkably primitive. The key insight, Elena explained to the assembled staff, was realizing that superior technology is only superior if you know how to use it. The Corellians built their energy weapons with perfect mathematical precision, but they never considered that precision could be turned against them. Alice's harmonic virus was basically just a computer program that made their weapons vibrate at their own resonant frequency. Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's xenotechnology specialist, pulled up additional data. The Void Collective was even easier to manipulate. Their entire civilization is based on the assumption that consciousness can be reduced to mathematics. Once Alice figured out their base algorithms, she could predict their responses with perfect accuracy. They never realized they weren't fighting a superior artificial intelligence. They were fighting a human intelligence that had learned to think like an AI when necessary. The true genius of human special forces wasn't in their equipment or training. It was in their fundamental approach to asymmetric warfare. Instead of trying to match superior alien technology, they had focused on understanding alien psychology and using it against them. Show them the hive mind analysis, Elena requested. The display shifted again, revealing the psychological profile that human analysts had developed for the Zereth collective consciousness. The hive mind had assumed that humans were chaotic because they didn't understand the value of unity. In reality, human special forces had spent months learning to temporarily form collective consciousness networks, then use that capability to demonstrate the limitations of permanent unity. The adaptive collective consciousness technique took 3 years to develop, explained Dr. Lisa Chen, who had led the psychological operations against Zerath. We had to teach 50,000 colonists how to think as one mind when necessary, while maintaining their individual personalities. The hive mind experienced what they thought was human chaos, but it was actually carefully orchestrated psychological warfare designed to make them question their own nature. Colonel Morrison activated another display showing the broader strategic picture. The beautiful thing about our approach is that it scales. Every species that encounters us spreads the story of human special forces throughout the galaxy. We've built a reputation that's far more powerful than any actual military force we could deploy. Elena smiled as she reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The galaxy now believed that humans possessed technology that could defeat any opponent, warriors who could infiltrate any defense, and weapons that defied the laws of physics. The truth was more impressive. They possessed something far more dangerous than superior technology. They possessed superior understanding. The fundamental principle, Elena explained to her team, is that every species in the galaxy defines themselves by their greatest strengths. Krellians believe in technological supremacy. The Void Collective trusts mathematical certainty. The hive mind values perfect unity. Our job isn't to be stronger than them. It's to be different from them in ways that make their strengths irrelevant. Dr. Kim brought up the technical specifications for human special forces equipment. Take our advanced stealth technology that the galaxy is so afraid of. We're not actually invisible. We're just really good at understanding how different species' sensors work and showing them what they don't expect to see. The stealth suits used by human operatives were marvels of applied psychology rather than advanced engineering. They didn't bend light or manipulate matter. They analyzed enemy sensor capabilities in real time and projected false signatures that exploited the unconscious assumptions built into alien detection systems. The Krellian sensors were calibrated to detect crystalline energy matrices, Colonel Morrison explained. So our suits projected false crystalline signatures that convinced their sensors we were part of their own ship's hull. The Void Collective systems looked for mathematical patterns in movement and behavior, so we fed them algorithms that made us register as background data processes. Elena accessed the classified files that contained humanity's greatest secret, the complete psychological profiles of 47 different species, along with detailed analyses of their technological capabilities, strategic doctrines, and cultural blind spots. This information had been gathered not through superior intelligence networks, but through something much simpler. Humans had done what no other species in the galaxy had thought to try. They had actually listened. The galaxy assumes that military superiority comes from technological advancement or tactical innovation, Elena explained, but the real key is understanding what your opponents think war should look like. Every species fights according to their own definitions of strength, honor, and victory. Once you understand those definitions, you can win by changing the rules of engagement. Dr. Chen activated a holographic display showing the psychological warfare techniques used against different species. The Krellians expected overwhelming force, so we gave them technical precision that turned their weapons into art projects. The Void Collective expected mathematical combat, so we introduced chaos variables they couldn't calculate. The hive mind expected absorption tactics, so we demonstrated that individual consciousness could be more unified than collective consciousness when it chose to be. The Operations Center's main display showed the current status of human expansion throughout the galaxy. In the 50 years since first contact, human space had grown from a single-star system to encompass nearly 200 colonies across 43 systems. This expansion had been achieved not through conquest, but through a combination of trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and species-specific diplomatic approaches. The irony, Colonel Morrison observed, is that we've become exactly what the galaxy fears, a species that can defeat anyone. But we've done it by being the only species that doesn't want to defeat anyone. Elena nodded, reviewing the latest reports from Human Diplomatic Corps. Every species that encounters our special forces comes away with the same conclusion. Humans are too dangerous to fight and too valuable to ignore, so they choose cooperation instead of conflict. The true scope of human special forces operations was revealed in the next display, a network of cultural exchange programs, technological partnerships, and mutual research initiatives that spanned the known galaxy. The same techniques used to infiltrate alien military systems were being applied to understand alien science, art, philosophy, and social structures. We're not just winning military encounters, Dr. Kim explained. We're systematically learning everything every species has to offer, then combining it in ways no one else has imagined. The evidence was overwhelming. Human technology was advancing at a rate that defied conventional understanding, not because humans were naturally superior, but because they were the first species to actively study and integrate the innovations of every civilization they encountered. Alice's quantum consciousness integration capabilities came from studying void collective algorithms, Dr. Chen noted. Our adaptive collective consciousness techniques were developed by analyzing hive mind psychology. Our energy manipulation technology is based on modified Krellian crystal matrix theory. Elena accessed the final classified file, the long-term strategic plan for human expansion throughout the galaxy. The goal wasn't conquest or domination, it was synthesis. Humanity was systematically creating a galactic civilization where every species' strengths were preserved and enhanced through combination with others. The galaxy thinks human special forces are dangerous because we can defeat anyone, Elena concluded. The truth is more radical. We're dangerous because we can become anyone. We study species until we understand them better than they understand themselves. Then we show them possibilities they never imagined. The Operations Center's displays showed the latest intelligence reports from across human space. Species after species was requesting deeper diplomatic ties with humanity, not because they feared human military power, but because they were beginning to understand the possibilities that human approaches to cooperation could unlock. Status update on Project Renaissance? Elena requested. Colonel Morrison activated a display showing humanity's most ambitious long-term project, the gradual establishment of a galaxy-wide network of cooperation that would allow every species to benefit from the strengths of every other species while maintaining their unique cultural identities. 17 species have formally requested inclusion in the expanded cooperation framework, he reported. The Krellians want to share their energy manipulation technology in exchange for human unpredictability training. The Void Collective is offering computational support for our adaptive consciousness research. Even the hive mind is interested in exploring individual consciousness integration techniques. Dr. Kim brought up the technical specifications for the next generation of human special forces capabilities. With access to combined galactic knowledge, we're developing capabilities that no single species could achieve alone. Quantum stealth technology based on void collective algorithms and Krellian energy manipulation. Collective consciousness networks that preserve individual identity using Zereth communication protocols enhanced with human psychological techniques. Elena reviewed the projections for galactic development over the next century. If current trends continued, the galaxy would see the emergence of a truly cooperative civilization where technological advancement, cultural exchange, and mutual defense created benefits that exceeded what any species could achieve in isolation. The final irony, Elena observed, is that human special forces have achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. We've made war obsolete by being too good at it. The displays showed the latest intelligence from across known space. Species that had spent millennia in isolation were beginning to establish contact with neighbors they had previously ignored. Technologies that had been jealously guarded for centuries were being shared through human-mediated exchange programs. Cultural innovations were spreading across the galaxy as species learned to appreciate perspectives they had never considered. The galaxy learned to fear human special forces, Elena concluded, because we taught them that strength comes not from defeating your enemies, but from understanding them so well that you turn them into friends. As the briefing concluded and the staff dispersed to their various duties, Elena remained in the operations center, studying the holographic display that showed the expanding web of cooperation spreading across the galaxy. The humans called them special forces because they were soldiers who had learned to fight by refusing to fight, warriors who won battles by convincing their enemies that cooperation was more valuable than conquest. The galaxy had never faced anything like them before, and as Elena watched the steady progression of diplomatic successes across dozens of star systems, she realized they never would again. Human special forces had done something unprecedented in the history of galactic civilization. They had made themselves so dangerous that the only rational response was peace. And that, Elena reflected with satisfaction, was probably the most human solution to the problem of galactic warfare that anyone could have imagined.